That's me, on the well ordinance. Maureen, what did you say? We can put this in the ordinance so that we don't have to rush on this well ordinance? We can just say they'll have to follow the revised ordinance?
Right.
You wrote me an email. I didn't understand what you meant.
What we have proposed for the zoning ordinance, or the idea of what we want to include in there, is a good basic stuff of what we want for protection. But there will be a clause in there that says, if we have another ordinance, whether it be a well ordinance or a large-scale water withdrawal, separate standalone ordinance, the stricter of the two will apply.
Okay.
Okay, so that way at least the zoning covers it now, and it gives us time to work on large-scale water withdrawal or well, however you want to do it.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay. So then I'll just explain to you guys what this is. So basically, Pennsylvania does not have any well construction standards, and this is what allows companies to abandon wells, to get away with not doing checks on their wells, and water gets polluted and all kinds of stuff like that. So it then becomes incumbent on us to update our well ordinance or create a new one in order to provide the provisions needed for these types of industries that we're now regulating for in this zoning ordinance. So I got some of the general recommendations from the DEP, or not the DEP, I'm sorry, the DRBC. He gave me a sample ordinance. It was a lot. I didn't realize that the solicitor could just quickly come up with something like he did with that septic tank ordinance, so I'm looking forward to talking to him about what the DRBC told me and seeing if he can come up with something a little less, I guess, complicated than what we were given.
What the solicitor did was copied Kidder Township's ordinance. So the ordinance that you got is what he would start with.
He's going to do the same thing. Okay, never mind that. All
But
right.
that is the way that it works. So if
Okay.
you had a couple different sample ordinances, didn't you?
Yeah, the guy from the DEP gave me a couple. He recommended Bucks Township. He said they've been doing this a really long time. They have a really tight system down there. They don't have a lot of problems, and their legislation holds up in court. And he said that's the most important thing, because a lot of these companies will take you to court to try to challenge pieces of your legislation.
Well, one of those townships, I think it was Bucks Head, if you look way back in papers on the internet, they had an industry that infiltrated the system down there. If that's the same township that I was looking at.
Maybe.
Yeah.
The one we got was from Buckingham Township.
It might be, if you look,
I'm
one
not-
of them I looked up that, and I think I got it from the sample ordinance,
Okay.
and that was the reason that they instituted that, is because they had previous industry there that contaminated the system,
Okay.
either deep wells or, I think it was deep wells,
Yeah,
the water table, I should say.
yeah.
And that's the reason, a good reason for that ordinance.
Okay. So I just have here, there's certain things that I think that we should include, just based on what I've talked to the DRBC about, also what goes on with these types of industries in general. So one thing we want to make sure is that, hold on, I'm on the well ordinance here. We want to regulate both the drilling of wells, inspection of wells, and require well permits. He said that the DEP has good guidelines to follow that could be included. So what we could do is we would just have to explicitly say that they would have to follow the DEP standards, because they're not just automatically required to follow DEP standards unless we tell them. But apparently, the DEP has very good well construction standards and testing and all that. So we could look towards them, or we could just put in there that they could follow that. That's what I was told. I didn't get too deep into it yet. Y'all would know more about this than me. He also said that prohibiting well testing could be considered biased, so we just want to make sure that we add that in. I don't know what that would mean or how it could be considered biased. I would feel like people wouldn't want to have to get well testing if they didn't have to, but that's what he told me, so I just want to put that out there. A lot of this has to do with the type of testing that is considered to be the safest, such as like 48 to 72 hours as the length of time that a well needs to be pumped and testing, 2-week monitor time. Now, let's see, another thing that is happening that is happening a lot, I guess, down in southeast PA, where they were having some water depletion problems, is that companies are being asked to provide security deposits so that the municipality can have their well or water testing double checked. So basically, they get to bring in their own expert, but they also could have to give us money so that we could send an expert in there with them to just kind of observe their testing, go over their paperwork, and make sure it's being done right. And that's being done, and it's being held up in court. So then they would, we can't make them pay for our water. We can't make them pay taxes or anything, but we can make them do it right if they're going to have an operation here. And so that's one way to ensure that there's no funny business with the paper, like, the testing and stuff, that it gets done right. And this could be as intensive or as minimal as we want it. We could probably just have our engineer check. They have people that literally, this guy will show up and he will stand over their engineer, whoever's checking it, and he'll just follow this dude around all day and check all his paperwork, and he'll say whether or not it's legit. And then the town has to decide who to listen to. And they get to choose their own consultant if they want, if they think that their paperwork is shady and they believe their expert instead. So that's an option that we could take. We don't have to take that. I think that we should take all of, I don't see why not. They have a lot of money. It's better to regulate them more and then see how it goes. I would rather not have people coming in taking advantage of this. I think that's really it for the well ordinance, what I think should be included on there. And as long as we're not going to be in any type of situation between the new well ordinance being done and the water extraction and the zoning ordinance being done, because I do worry about that little gap of time. But you said that the stricter of the two would have to be followed, so that would
Right.
cover us then. So I'm not worried. I'm not in a rush for this then. So
May I ask a question? Jessica, does the state of Pennsylvania require well testing? It doesn't?
no, they don't, and that because they don't have well construction or testing standards. Yeah, but the DEP requires it for a lot of their projects, so it's recommended that you could refer a company to the DEP.
One more question then. If the state wouldn't require it and the borough would, did you find out if the borough would be held liable for the
Oh,
request
no,
of the inspection?
we're allowed. Oh, no, they, for their inspection, no, they have to do their
Well,
inspection.
no, what I'm asking is if the state says you don't require it, and the borough would say you needed to do this, this, and this, is the borough held liable if that isn't done?
Well, we are held liable only by ourselves because it's our own legislation. So because it's not a state legislation, we would have to say we violated our own ordinance. So,
Right,
yeah,
but
yeah.
what I'm saying is,
No,
for
no,
this
they
here, like
can't
if you
get
were
us.
building a home and you drilled a well,
Well, a residential well and a commercial well are a little bit different because the state does have standards for residential wells, but they don't have standards for the commercial wells.
okay.
So that,
So you're talking about
That's
a
what I was
well
trying to-
ordinance for non-residential wells?
well, it can all be in one ordinance, and we can regulate non-residential commercial wells in the same ordinance that we're regulating residential wells, and we can prevent the two from overlapping.
okay.
That's how it's being done.
Okay,
know.
are you looking for some kind of ordinance along the lines of the Buckingham, or are you looking for something much less than the Buckingham?
We don't have to have it as extensive as long as we know that it's protective for what we need. I don't know if they have, I don't know what the chances of us having a fracking operation in Jim Thorpe are, especially with the DRBC regulations that just passed about fracking. So a lot of these testing requirements and stuff that are in some of these have to do with the fracking wells being tested. So if we're not worried about a fracking well being tested, maybe we don't have to have something that's that strict for that particular area. So I have what I think is most important, that I think will protect our water supply. Another thing that is in the well ordinance is that a company is automatically assumed liable for any residential well depletion and water depletion. That's not included in the large-scale water extraction. The large-scale water extraction only talks about what happens to the public bodies of water, the creeks, the rivers, and whatnot. It doesn't address what happens to residents' water supplies. So the well ordinance will also address that. The one that we got from Buckingham said something like, up to 3 years, a company is considered to be responsible if any well within a certain amount of, foot range or whatever has depletion. They can take them, they can challenge them, and the company is assumed responsible.